Well, hi, everybody. Welcome to a special mid-season edition of Beyond the Booth. There's no better time than now to give the beautiful gift of sight and life to a fellow New Yorker. Sign up to become an eye, organ, or tissue donor today by using your mobile device or computer. Go to eyedonation.org. So we're 4 games into the second half. Things seem to be changing day by day. It's a lot of excitement in Mets land. Keith, Ronnie, and I were a little jealous over the weekend that we didn't get to share in the craziness that went on in Pittsburgh, but we got a little crazy of our own in Cincinnati last night. This season so far has been so bizarre with all the injuries and the Mets being held up by the pitching and defense, and now the offense starting to come around. What do you make of how this season has gone so far?
In its entirety?
Yeah.
Well, to me, the most important thing is the bench mob with the job they did that kept this team together, and the pitching. Obviously, those are the two takeaways for me in the first half. But this second half is just absolutely incredible. The first 4 games that are played were just so out in right field, coming in just bizarre games, long and lengthy and full of stuff, and not to have the game in front of us, on the monitor made it much more difficult because so many things were going on, and a lot of things went on last night for you guys. What was it, 4 hours and 47 minutes?
It was every bit of that. Ronnie, what do you think?
Well, I think 2 things for me. The domination of the pitching early in the season this year, especially the first 2.5 months or so. It looked like the hitters were not going to do anything over the course of this year. And maybe we've seen that the sticky stuff really did play a big part in some of that. And secondly, coming off the 60-game season, all of the soft tissue injuries that baseball has had, not only the Mets, it's all through baseball. Guys are going down. We're seeing guys brought up to the major leagues that have no experience. So it's going to be interesting to see who's left standing late this season and what your roster looks like on September 15th.
Yeah, I think that you made a couple of really interesting points. The one about the sticky stuff especially stands out. And obviously the Mets are right now a microcosm of that, because we've seen the offense explode in their games. We had so many games early in the season where there were just no run scoring on either side. I saw the stat today. We're now 1 month into the crackdown, and the OPS before the crackdown was 712 across baseball, and since it's 742. So do you think there's a direct correlation there? Do you think there are other factors involved, warmer weather, pitchers wearing down? What do you think of what's happened so far, and whether baseball actually got this one right by doing what they did?
Well, I think they definitely got it right. I think it's very difficult to make a new rule in season, but it's ended up working pretty well. I think the umpires have done a great job of waiting a couple of minutes until we're off and in commercial, until they kind of check the pitchers. So they've done a better job of that. The pitchers are afraid to be called out. Only one has been caught so far, the pitcher for the Seattle Mariners. And I really think, Gary, that a lot of guys with the first intention of getting a good grip on the ball then realized, especially with the Rapsodo and TrackMan and all of those things, that by experimenting with sticky substances, they could get some spin levels on their breaking pitches or fastballs that were unprecedented, especially, unprecedented as far as that their physical ability to go there. And by taking that out, I think we're seeing a little more level playing field.
My feeling, Gary, it could be psychological too. The cheating has been going on forever. It is a rule, and it should have always be enforced. And they have never enforced it, not in our days. We had guys, Don Sutton had a razor blade in his glove somewhere. And so, we all know about Mike Scott. How many revolutions are we talking about with the grip? Did it make that much of a difference? My thought is this, from a psychological point of view, Ronnie, and you were going to answer this.
Yeah.
You've got this grip and you've got your breaking ball, and all of a sudden you don't have that grip where you're used to throwing that breaking ball with that grip, and now all of a sudden you don't have it, and you hang a few or you bounce a few in the dirt, and you lose that confident feeling. And I'm seeing a lot of hangers lately, a lot of hanging breaking balls. So I think from a psychological point of view, I think it's affected the pitchers. Look at the Yankee ace. He finally threw after four starts. He finally had a good one where he was dominant like the old pitcher that he was. Maybe it took him a while to readjust not having the grip.
Keith, I'm with you. I think it's like having a Superman's cape and having it taken away. All of a sudden you feel invincible out there, and then you don't, and you have pitches that are unhittable, and then you don't have them. I absolutely believe it plays with your psyche.
And I think it's not just spin rate; it's also command that seems to have been affected for some pitchers. And again, you don't know the one-to-one correlation, but you look at the numbers for Edwin Diaz over this last stretch of time, with his spin rate down, his ability to throw his fastball for strikes down, and you wonder whether this is having some kind of an impact on him. And as you plan going forward for the rest of the season and beyond, how you assess what the impact is on particular pitchers going forward. Do you think that's something that they need to be concerned about?
No, I think so. But there's a different way to look at it too, Gary. I thought it was the funny bill of goods the pitchers originally tried to sell and everyone bought, is that I'm throwing 100, I need to use something to grip the baseball or you're going to get hit in the head. Well, we had more guys hit in the head this year than ever. And the reason being, if you use a sticky substance, and you are in the mode of, I'm going to grip it and rip it, and I'm going to throw this slider 99 miles an hour, and it sticks to your finger and doesn't come out, because it'll always come out naturally when you're not using anything, because you got a feel for the baseball. But when you're using sticky substance and it doesn't come out, you end up with a helicopter hanging slider or a backup slider, and that ends up hitting hitters. So it can work both ways, even when you use the sticky stuff. But it's going to be a big adjustment for a lot of guys to pitch with, and I certainly didn't know this, but it seems like pitchers have been using some kind of sticky substance to get a feel for the ball for a long time, since they first got in pro ball. And I think a lot of it has to do with the game has changed in this way. I could go 3-4 innings with the same baseball. The ball would be on the ground. It would go up against the dugout. It'd be thrown back out. You would just use it, and it would have scuff marks on it, and it would be really sticky. You use the whole game. They throw a ball out anytime it touches the ground. So you have a new pearl all of the time. That's a problem too.
So let's get back to the Mets. And obviously this is not a perfect team by any means. And we've seen a lot of ups and downs as the season has gone along, but there's been a lot of conversation among the players and the coaching staff about the new culture on this team and the resilience that they've shown. And a lot of teams talk in those terms, and we've seen this team come back the last couple of days. They've come back from 6 runs down, from 4 runs down to win games. And it's odd for us because we're not in the clubhouse these last couple of years. So it's hard for us to get a view of the inner workings of the way this team relates to one another. So all we can really watch is what we see on the field. So I guess my question to you guys as ex-players, from what you've seen, is there something special about this group and the way that they've responded to adversity? Or is that just something that players say because it makes them feel good about themselves?
I think that they do have this in the clubhouse. I don't think they're blowing smoke. I think it's for real. It's a generational thing. It wasn't in our day. You had a guy that had a bad day and maybe made an error that cost the game, and also took an 0 for 4 and left 12 men on base. The worst possible day you could have as an everyday player. You would come up and pat him on the back and say, get him tomorrow, and that's it. That it wouldn't be a group thing. So this is entirely new to me, and I think it's entirely the fact that I am of a generation. This is a new generation in here. It's a whole new group. I mean, these guys in their 20s and in their early 30s, this is what they call them, the millennials. This is what they are, and they're different than what we were. I've had bad days. I grew up in that Cardinal clubhouse with all those veterans when I was young, and a bad day, boy, there was no sympathy. It was like, you better throw you in the water and you better swim, because we're not gonna throw you a life buoy.
I think we underestimate how difficult it's been on them during this pandemic. There's a lot of things that have been taken away that we just take for granted, whether it was early in the pandemic, going out and having a bite to eat as a teammate, or all of that stuff, whatever it is. So what has happened, I think, is that you become a very insular group. There's no media around. There's just coaches, players, and you're around each other all the time. And you can go one of two ways. You can go, boy, I'm sick of these guys. I'd love to have a break. Or you really become a team. And, I don't know if it is, but it really feels organic. It feels natural. It feels right. And Kevin Pillar has said a lot of smart stuff this year. And when he said we were built for this, I took it two ways. I took it that they're built to withstand adversity, and I took it to mean that they're built to score some runs. And they haven't, but they're starting to.
Mets fans, be amazing. Be generous. Be thoughtful. Become an eye, organ, and tissue donor. Thousands of New Yorkers need sight and life-restoring transplants, and they're depending on us to help. Go to idonation.org on your mobile device, tablet, or computer and sign up today. It only takes a minute to be amazing. The Eye Bank of New York. Give the gift of sight and life.
Let's give the beautiful gift of sight and life to a fellow New Yorker. Sign up to become an eye, organ, and tissue donor today by using your mobile device or computer. Just go to idonation.org.
So the overall view of this team right now, if you just look at the numbers, is that they are an offensively deficient team, because they're still 29th in the major leagues in runs scored, even though they've scored 29 runs in the last 3 games. But the view of this team going into the season was that it was going to be an offensive powerhouse. And they've got most of their pieces back, although obviously they're missing Francisco Lindor for a significant period of time. So we're 10 days out from the trading deadline. And remember, this year it's a hard trading deadline, July 30th. There's no waiver deals in August the way there have been in the past. So I've read a lot about, the Mets' interest in Chris Bryant and at one point Josh Donaldson. Do you guys feel as though this team needs an offensive upgrade at the trading deadline, or do you think that they should count on these guys to reproduce what they've done in the past, and that they're due for a big second half offensively?
I don't think they need more pieces for the offense. I think they're getting everybody back. I think this team was starting to gel offensively. You know me, Gary. Pitching is the name of the game. That's where they're deficient in my mind because of the injuries to the starting rotation. The bullpen is I think it's deep, and to me, you don't know about Carrasco. You don't know what Syndergaard's going to bring in September. September is a long way away. They're still in first place. Philly's kind of put the heat on them. So my feeling is, if push comes to shove, and there's 10 days, there's no rush to make a deal. You can do it at midnight if you have to, and make that decision. But to me, it would be the pitching, not the offense.
I'm with Keith 100%. I think they've got enough in that room to offensively get it done. Dominic is starting to round into shape. Conforto looks like he might be on his way. Alonso's probably been as consistent as any of the Mets hitters. So I think they have enough offensively. I'm with Keith. A depth for that starting pitching would be an important thing. The one thing, and it's not because of last night's game, the one thing that I'm looking at is that early in the season, the Mets had trouble catching the ball, and this has nothing to do with last night. That's the one area that I'll be interested to see because, the offense starting to take off is very, very important. But also a lot of the issues they had in April was not making that big play, not turning that double play when you needed it. And it'll be interesting to see if their defense is up to snuff as we go along.
Well, let's talk about deals for starting pitchers. When you talk about adding starting pitching, and I'm almost certain that they will add somebody or maybe multiple somebodies, but are you looking for head of the rotation guys who would be costly? Like Jose Barrios' name has come up. That's going to cost you a major prospect, a Brett Beatty or Ronnie Mauricio, Francisco Alvarez. And I don't think you want to part with those pieces, but would you be willing to get this year and next year from Jose Barrios for one of your major prospects? Or are you looking a little bit further down the food chain for somebody who's not going to cost you a big time prospect?
Yeah, I think that they've got some really good prospects that could be real high end, and I would not want to part with those. I'm looking at a little lower level, a person that will eat up innings, that's pretty dependable on making their start, because that's the issue, You want to have a guy that's going to make his start each and every fifth day because of the aches and pains of DeGrom and others. Merrill Kelly has been thrown out there. They should have got him about a month ago because his last 4 or 5 starts have been excellent. Almost had a complete game in his last start. So that's the kind of pitcher I think you could acquire, and it wouldn't certainly cost you a top prospect.
I just wouldn't want to sell the farm and put all your eggs in one basket. You're looking at maybe one pitcher, one guy to fill the need. I'm kind of in Ronnie's camp. There's going to be a lot around, and we don't know what's available out there, and there might be more things available that we're not aware. We don't know who and what they want. We can only guess. Obviously, they're going to want our top prospects. These teams that are sell. So that's a difficult question. But I just think the most important thing is, Gary, that a pitcher is in need, a starting pitcher. And I would like to know what do you feel? What are your thoughts on it, Gary?
Well, my feeling is that you need multiple starting pitchers because you need to cover for depth, and you also need to cover for the fact that with last year's short season, you got people bumping up against unknown innings limits, particularly Taijuan Walker, who threw so few innings, not just last year, but even the 2 years before that because of his Tommy John. So I think, if you could pick up a Merrill Kelly, a John Gray, people in that category, just to fill out your rotation, give you some 6 and 7 deep starting pitching, I think that would be important. But let me throw out a wild card at you guys, because there's been so much conversation about Chris Bryant. And to me, Chris Bryant makes no sense for the Mets, especially if J.D. Davis has come back as healthy as he has and looked as good at the plate as he has. But how about a different pending free agent in that Cubs clubhouse? With Lindor out for a month, maybe 2 months, would you think about maybe buying low on Javi Baez, who's probably not going to cost you a whole lot heading for free agency? Would that be a good addition for this team?
Well, I love Javi Baez, so I'm biased. I would love to have him on the club to play shortstop for a month. Then you can move him to second base after that. And if you re-signed him, you'd find a place for him. He's just that dynamic. I would love Javi Baez on this team. I think he would fit much better than Bryant.
I think that a player like Brian, I think, would love the spotlight in New York, number one. He's not in the spotlight in Chicago. It's the number 3 market in the country. And, he's kind of like the Joker in the deck. He could come here and do what Cespedes did for the Mets in 15, be that kind of player and get that kind of out of him. If it takes you all the way to the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, then yes, but that's the unknown. I would be very cautious about it, but I would very, very certainly entertain that idea.
Well, it all comes back to this. Again, you don't know how long Lindor is going to be out, and obliques can be very tricky injuries. I mean, he could be out till the end of August or even beyond. We just don't know that. So do you feel comfortable with Luis Guillorme being your everyday shortstop, or do you feel like he's more of a backup player? And if not Javi Baez, we've talked all this season about pending free agents. Trevor Story is also a free agent at the end of the year. You could probably make a deal for him as a rental and not have to give up the farm. So I guess the question is about what you have now versus what it would cost you to bring in a fairly big piece as a 2-month rental.
How about we get two from the Cubs, Javi Baez and Zach Davies. Take care of two places.
There you go.
Trevor Story is interesting there, Gary. That's a good thought.
I mean, that's that. I mean, you're not getting Corey Seager because he's kind of he'll be needed down the stretch of the season, but those other free agent shortstops are still out there. Let's talk Jacob DeGrom. What do you make, Ronnie, of this succession of small injuries and what it bodes for the last 2 months of the season?
I'm very concerned. I am. I think that I don't think that you can go through a season like he's going through and have these aches and pains that are stopping him from making starts and think that they're just going to go away and in August 1st and you're going to make 11 starts without any issue at all. I think this is something that probably is going to linger all season long, and you might see him for 2 or 3 starts, snippets, and then maybe another rest. Obviously, he's feeling something that's not coming out in the MRI, and whatever that is stopping him from pitching. And once you are on that train, I think for a pitcher, you feel like you are one pitch away from hurting yourself or ending your career. So I wouldn't expect what has happened to this point to all of a sudden go away and everything is perfect for the rest of the year. So that's why I'm concerned about whether he's going to be the guy to take the ball every 5th day. I really am.
Keith?
Oh, okay. Ronnie's the expert on the pitching. I'm concerned about DeGrom. How can anybody not be concerned? I'm also concerned about Carrasco because he's 34. It's a tear, not a pull. Tear a hamstring or any muscle is serious. I'll give them credit. They have been very careful with Carrasco, and they should be, and not rush him. In a perfect world, they could be a month away from the deadline instead of here we are 10 days where you can get Carrasco back and see how he pitches. He would be a splendid addition. But then again, you're looking at a guy that he can make like DeGrom, make one pitch and pop it again, and he pops it again, he's done. So, and then you got the issue of the 10 days for the trade deadline. And like I said, you just can't, are you going to put all your eggs in Carrasco being healthy? It's just really, really it's a predicament, a really bad predicament for the front office right now.
Let's go back to DeGrom, because what we witnessed over the first half of the season is something that none of us has ever seen before. How do you even put in perspective what Jake was able to accomplish this year? And I guess the overriding question is there correlation between what he's accomplished in terms of pushing the limits of what any pitcher's arm is capable of, particularly at his age, and the injuries that he's trying to work through?
I think that's exactly what we're seeing, Gary. We're seeing the physical limitation of pushing the human body to a place that's never been before. We're talking about a guy who started his career throwing 92 to 93, and 7 years later, and all those innings later, he's throwing 7 miles an hour faster. That's just unheard of. I mean, everybody in the history of the game throws slower as they get older. It just always has been thus. So I think that's what we're seeing, is that the pushing to a place that's never been done before has some physical limitations. And I think because he's throwing 100 miles an hour, he's at a place now that his body is feeling things that he probably didn't feel when he was throwing 97, 98 miles an hour. And those things, which maybe you can pitch through, maybe you can't, but the unknown of never feeling those before, alarming him like never before.
I'm just amazed, Gary. I mean, most hitters, if not all, get to the big leagues, they have to hit the fastball. Now, if you can't hit the fastball, you're not going to get to the big leagues. Now, we're seeing the upstairs fastball right now, where players can't handle it. With DeGrom, I think it's made pitching easier as far as you can just pitch upstairs in the strike zone, not for all the pitchers, but it's such a big target for them. What is amazing to me about DeGrom is his command of his secondary pitches. And I'm not talking, and the quality of the pitches. The slider is off the charts. He's like Carlton. They can paint that slider. Seaver when he was on a good game, but we're seeing it every start. Now, I never got to see Tom pitch, 36 starts. I know I would face Seaver maybe 4, 5, 6 times a year in division with the Mets, but we get to see him every start. And to me, it is just remarkable, his command of that slider and the quality of that slider. And everybody forgets about his changeup, which he has a turnover changeup, which is a quality changeup, and he paints that too. So he's got 2 pitches that are breaking each side of the plate, different direction, and a fastball that rides up. And to me, for him to go out there and do it day in, day out, I mean, he just didn't put those numbers up. Let me tell you, that was just some incredible pitching that I haven't seen in my days.
Well, I hope we see a lot more of it. It's going to be fascinating to see how they handle him over the remainder of the season. Shortened starts, more rest between starts. I just don't know what they're going to do and how they're going to handle it. It's going to be one of the interesting stories down the last 2 months of the season.
Mets fans, be amazing. Be generous. Be thoughtful. Become an eye, organ, and tissue donor. Thousands of New Yorkers need sight and life-restoring transplants, and they're depending on us to help. Go to idonation.org on your mobile device, tablet, or computer and sign up today. It only takes a minute to be amazing. The Eye Bank of New York. Give the gift of sight and life.
Let's give the beautiful gift of sight and life to a fellow New Yorker. Sign up to become an eye, organ, and tissue donor today by using your mobile device or computer. Just go to idonation.org.
Fill in the blank. The Mets will win the National League East if.
They hit. They'll win it by 10 games.
The Mets will.
I'm going out on a limb.
The Mets will win the National League East if 1 or 2 things happen. Edwin Diaz reverts to how he pitched the first 2 months, or if he doesn't, Seth Lugo takes his game to the same level he had last year.
Well, I think those are really interesting answers. I think I'd go in a completely different direction. I think it has everything to do with the starting pitching, which kind of circles back to what we were talking about in our trade discussions. I am assuming this team is going to hit. I mean, it was our assumption in spring training this year. It was shocking in April when they couldn't hit with runners in scoring position. Then half the lineup was hurt, and you were relying on AAA players to fill in big chunks of your lineup. Now with everybody but Lindor healthy, they've got enough offense to carry them. And I can't believe that what we've seen the last few days is not going to be the norm over the last couple of months. But the question, and I think it's going to be a question for every team in the major leagues, is how your starting pitching holds up over the last 2 months of the season in the wake of a short season last year. I don't think anybody has the answer to that. And Ronnie, I would have to believe that in every front office and every organization across baseball, especially among contenders, they've got to be mapping out strategies for how they're going to be handling the last 2 months of the season as pitchers reach, innings totals that far exceed what they did last year.
No, absolutely. I think, it might be a blessing in disguise for the Dodgers that Clayton Kershaw doesn't pitch for 2 months and comes back as in fresh in October. Maybe the Mets with Jacob DeGrom have to say, listen, we can only pitch you once a week because of what you're going through. So by the time we get to October, or hopefully get to October, you're ready to go. The reason I said, and I'm with you, Gary, starting pitching is going to be very important to watch. But I will say, as far as the reason I said closers, this game is the game now is a bullpen game, and you can't take a punch in the nose over and over and over again when you've built a lead. We've seen that with the Phillies, although they've come back. But when you've got the game wrapped up, you got to wrap it up. It's very demoralizing when you can, I think.
Well, I just think that I think the division was not as good as everybody thought. I'm not a big fan of the Phillies. They're hot right now. Every team has a hot streak. Gary, remember when the season started, you and I felt Washington was the team to watch out for. And they're on the cusp right now. If they hit a bad streak, they're going to be, and the Mets win some ball games, and Phillies, they can be out of it. And it could become this division could become a 2-horse race real quick with the Braves having their injuries as well. But I just think it reminds me when in 1987, when all of our starters went down at one point, and it was at 87, Ron, right? You got hurt in 87.
Yep.
Frank Cashin never made a move. He felt to bolster our pitching, and he brought up guys from the minor leagues because he thought our offense could carry the team. And we did. We wound up winning the division, and we had a great final 6 weeks. I'm not saying that this offense is as good as an 87 offense, but in today's game right now, which is all that matters, I think that they have enough. I just feel they're starting to gel, and they're going to start putting up some runs. And when they put up some runs, they're going to win ball games.
All right, we're almost done here, but Keith, I have to get your take on the most pressing issue of the day. Keith?
Yes.
Have you ever tried Skyline chili?
Ronnie, I overheard your comments.
Yes.
I've always been a team man, but I'm sorry. I'm going to be selfish here.
What?
I've never tried it, and I have no desire to try it. I have a visual of it, and I got a revisual last night in the broadcast, and that's all I care to ever see of it again. I'm not going to try it.
I think we'll leave it right there. Thanks for joining us on Beyond the Booth, reminding you to give the beautiful gift of sight and life to a fellow New Yorker. Sign up to become an eye, organ, and tissue donor today by using your mobile device or computer. Go to idonation.org. See you on the